and let's get started. So, what are we going to review today? So the reason we're here in the first place is because we are in this industry called international education. I have a feeling that most of everyone who is on this call, looking at the participants list, has experience working in an intensive English program, in an institutional setting, in a program that is related, very, very directly to the language teaching side of the industry. But as we know and love, international education is wider than the ESL language school. And that's what we're really here to talk about. A lot of students are not able to travel these days, as we know, due to COVID, and that means that our jobs in schools are impacted because we have fewer students to teach. So maybe all of a sudden we are curious to look around us and to start understanding what the world is, this kind of greater international education world around us is. And some of us may be a little nervous because for 15, 20, 25 years, we have been on that language program side of the sector. So we've brought on some fabulous speakers here who have done the switch themselves. They were all on the language institution program side and are now working in a service provider capacity. So they're still very, very much involved in international education. That is still their world, but they're here to tell you kind of about their companies and what transferable skills they brought into their roles and what you all should be also thinking that you have as a transferable skill. They're going to tell you if they're hiring, how you can find out about some of those jobs, and really how to make that transition from thinking about it to applying for a role to actually interviewing to starting that new role. So you're going to get all those tips. And then we're going to add a few additional general tips that we think apply not just to the companies that are highlighted here today, but all companies. So I'm going to let all of our fabulous panelists introduce themselves. I really want to thank them all ahead of time for taking the time to speak to us today. And let's get started with Sarah Davila from Pearson.
All right, hello. I want to first thank Lead5050 for having me here today, especially Nadine and Emma, who reached out to bring me onto this webinar. I am Sarah Davila, and I do currently work for Pearson. Prior to that, though, I was a classroom teacher for roughly 15 years, specifically working in English as a foreign language, and I was working overseas with a primary location in Korea, and I also worked a little bit around that area. So many of us who've come into English language teaching or international education often start off somehow in education, and I was definitely an educator before I came into one of the largest multinational education companies on the planet, which is Pearson. So that was a transition I actually had to make myself at one point. And in fact, my transition into Pearson was my second lateral career move. I actually took a year off from education before I came to Pearson and began to explore an entirely different sector in education, which is called corporate learning and development, or corporate L&D. And doing that transition was actually the thing that gave me the confidence that if I could make one career move one way into a new industry, I felt very confident I could make a career move another way into a company like Pearson. But I want to give you some of what I've learned about doing this, a little bit about what we're doing at Pearson, and hopefully some useful advice. So at Pearson, are we hiring? Absolutely. There are a number of different jobs inside of the organization that are open. Many of these would be appropriate for anyone who has experience in the classroom, in classroom administration, in administering teachers, other academics. And honestly, if you've ever had to manage a busy classroom of freshmen, sophomore, junior, or college students, you're probably pretty well qualified to do people management in any organization, because that is in fact where our students often go after us. So if you're thinking like, how do I begin to transfer these skills? It's really useful to start thinking about some of the skills you have as educators that do translate into companies, into corporations, into a different field you can go into. For example, project management is a position you could find at Pearson. What is involved in project management? Understanding what you want to achieve, clearly defining the goals and objectives for a product, working with a team of people and cross-collaborating, being able to communicate with intercultural groups, being able to understand the backgrounds that different people are coming with, understanding and respecting those ideas, and then being able to determine which strengths and weaknesses you have inside of your team that will allow you to be successful. While those are not skills that we might typically think of as also being educator skills, they're absolutely skills that we use all the time in the classroom. We have to organize our students, manage them, and make sure they do all of their deliverables on time, be that the essay they have to do or the class that they need to attend. Right now with online teaching and learning, we're doing a lot of chasing, making sure students are showing up, doing a lot of follow-up, and all of those skills would be appropriate to any kind of corporate environment you might be interested in moving into. So when you're looking at these job boards, you might not find something that screams to you, obviously, as an ex-teacher, this is a great role for me. But there are a lot of different ways that we can transition into these roles. One of the things that I can say too is content. Pearson is an education company, and as an education company, we need content for our students. So you will find a lot of different positions open right now inside of the company for content development and content creation, which are also very appropriate for educators. I would also say take a look at anything that we're offering that's currently editorial. If you've ever had to correct students' writing, give someone feedback on the information that they're turning in, if you yourself have ever had to cross-check your curriculum, work on your worksheets, spell check your own PowerPoints, all of that is giving you a lot of skills that are actually really transferable into editorial management and editorial development, content management, and content editorial. So if you're looking around at the Pearson job boards, and I have a link here for you, I'll read out, but I'll also pop these into the chat when I'm finished. The best place to look is pearson.jobs. That is the entire web link, and you will see all of the jobs that we're currently posting, not only in the United States, but internationally. So if you are coming in from another country, I saw some people here from India today. I know we have quite a few people in from Europe. Pearson Jobs is a great place to look for opportunities in your area. One of the things that I've talked about is transferable skills. I think this is something that as teachers, we often undervalue all of the skills that we have that have a great role to play inside of corporate education and the larger world that we can go into. A couple of the sectors that I've been following that I think are very natural fits for educators: instructional designers. This is a job I've seen a lot of. If you've been following me on LinkedIn, I'm posting a lot of links to these types of jobs as well. An instructional designer, the role of an instructional designer is to simply go in and say, all right, you want to teach something, what are those objectives? And then as an educator, you sit down and you design the course to meet those objectives. For English language teachers and for those of us who come from an English background, that can also often feel like something that's very challenging or very difficult to do. But one thing I would remind all of us about is we're English language teachers. We can learn to do anything. As teachers, our job is constantly learning content. And as English teachers, oftentimes the content we're teaching our students to help prepare them for the real world is widely outside of our own experience. A really good example of this, we have a course series at Pearson called University Success. Some of the content inside of this English language course is specifically aligned to things like virology. We have an entire section on civil engineering and air filtration. Before coming to Pearson, I did not know anything about either of those topics. However, because I'm an English language instructor, I do understand how to teach that content appropriately to make sure my English language students can understand it. If you have that skill, you can absolutely go into a hospital tomorrow, and there are a number of hospitals desperately looking for instructional designers to help them with their medical implementation and rolling out medical type of courseware and training. you are perfectly appropriate to design some of those courses to help meet the deliverables and the outcomes that they need to achieve with those programs. And those are absolutely skill sets that we have. So when you're out there and you're looking at your opportunities, it can be very intimidating sometimes to read through some of these job descriptions, but really, quite honestly, many of us are qualified to do instructional design roles. Many of us are qualified to do any kind of content editorial roles. And many of us are also very qualified to do what they call implementation and sales consulting roles, which is essentially going in and training people how to use the products that a company is producing. So I would really encourage a lot of people to look into some of those positions. In fact, my current position at Pearson, I actually started off when I applied for an instructional design job. And I will tell you, that was the most nerve-wracking application I had ever put into existence. Even though I read that job description backwards and forwards 8 times, I convinced myself for at least one day, I'm never qualified to do this job. However, I talked myself out of it. I cleaned up my resume. I took a very careful read of the job description, made sure the information that I was submitting appropriately matched that, pushed the button and hit send, and here we are some 6 years later doing what is kind of an incredible job around the world. So I have to say, I'm very pleased that I ended up here. So don't be afraid to take the risk and opportunity to do something new. I'll be honest, when I'm looking at job boards now, I want to be sure that I'm looking at all of the skills I know I have and also thinking of what can I learn. And the final example that I would probably leave you with is if you're thinking about what can I learn, how can I be sure that I'm positioning myself correctly? I was looking around at some instructional design roles recently, and I started to notice this huge list of programs, software applications. And I was thinking, my goodness, if I had to apply for an instructional design job today, I don't know how to use any of these programs. So in order to prepare for this presentation, I actually went out and took a look at them. And one of them was a piece called Articulate 360. A lot of these instructional design roles were asking for you to be competent in Articulate 360. Never heard of it before. I took a look at it. It's a PowerPoint add-on. If you can build a PowerPoint class, you can probably create an Articulate 360 class and turn your PowerPoint into an online interactive learning experience. And given the fact that in March of this year, everyone on this call had to immediately upskill to use online teaching and learning in a way that they've never done before, I'm really quite confident that anyone in this audience that needs to learn something can probably do it in a little bit less than 3 months and be prepared for any kind of transition that you want to make. For content, there are a number of content companies. If you do want to stay specifically in ELT in the industry, I have a list of content companies that are looking for content writers. And I've even reached out to a few of these, and they've told me that they're absolutely hiring, looking for more content people. Anyone who has this skill is very much a hot commodity on the market. So if you're just considering your future, you're not thinking of moving, but you definitely want to explore, I have some resources for that as well. And I think that the last thing I would say is be aware that there are a lot of different ways to position yourself laterally, even just inside of education. There are a couple of big areas that are coming out that are crossing sectors. One specifically that I'm keeping an eye on is the diversity and inclusion space. For a lot of us that have been working with international students for most of our career, we are extremely gifted in working and smoothing through cultural communication and the kind of challenges that can arise when you don't have high quality communication for tense situations. Because we are very skilled at negotiating and mediating a lot of challenges that can arise when you're communicating about complex topics. We often have developed a very good skill set to bring us into diversity and inclusion. So that's another good piece to look at. So those are some of the things that I have come with today. I'll be sharing out some links in the chats in just a few minutes. And I think from here, I'm going to hand it over to Uri to give some more information. Yeah, unless
Great,
I'm
thank
early.
you so much. And before we switch slides and introduce Uri, I just wanted everyone to realize that as we go through these slides and you'll meet these different fabulous people from different organizations, we've put their LinkedIn address, URL on the slide, and everyone is comfortable with you connecting with them on LinkedIn. And we will talk about the importance of networking sort of virtually in a few slides, but take note of those. Again, you will get this slideshow as well, but do feel comfortable using those LinkedIn addresses. And welcome, Uri.
Great, thank you. And I'm starting my timer. I will do my best to keep on track. Again, thanks to Lead5050 for the invitation. It's really a pleasure to be here and presenting alongside esteemed industry colleagues. So just a little about me very, very quickly. I'm the Director of Strategic Partnerships for ApplyBoard. Basically, that means I talk to schools and see how we can work together, and I kind of work on some strategic teams in ApplyBoard. Before that, I was the country director for IDP in Canada and Latin America for 10 years, the IELTS business in our school partnerships in Canada and Latin America. And prior to that, I actually ran language schools in Canada and the US, and I was in the classroom before that. So I do sort of appreciate the classroom experience and you know, what it means in a school to work with students every day. Just a little bit about ApplyBoard. ApplyBoard is the shortest version is Expedia for Education. It's an online platform for recruitment, admissions, and recruiter management. We've grown, it was founded in 2015 by international students to Canada, and now we have more than, I think today was 565 people around the world. Yeah, and it's a great organization, and invite you to come and check us out. So to jump in, are we hiring? Absolutely, we're hiring, desperately hiring. Just some examples of partner relations. So these are the people who talk to schools in Canada, the US, the UK, Australia, and New Zealand. The sales team, these are people who work with students and the people who help students around the world in India and China, all over East Asia, all over Southeast Asia, Latin America. And actually, there's probably some Middle East and Africa jobs there too. And then we have customer experience people who handle admissions in the applications process, your high IQ engineering people, the marketing and operations people, and they often work at the headquarters, which is in Kitchener, Ontario, about an hour and a half west of Toronto. But in these days, we're all working dispersed, and I'm sure that there's some geographical flexibility moving forward. So what, I talked to our talent team, and they're an amazing team. So, you know, what is ApplyBoard looking for? People with passion for ApplyBoard's organizational mission and our values. Creativity, innovation, people who really like interested in coming to work and succeeding and helping each other out. Our talent team loves clean and concise resumes with highlights of relevant sector experience. So, you know, ApplyBoard is sort of a tech company, and there's, you know, some concern from some people, oh, I come from an academic background, or I've worked in schools, you know, how am I going to, you know, can I work for a tech company? Can I contribute? Absolutely. Listen, the engineers and are wonderful people, but they need us. They need the subject matter experts. You know, we need the cooperation of schools. And so, you know, if you've worked at a school or if you've worked in front of students, you have a passion for helping human beings succeed in these like amazing adventures that they're on, this really, that experience and that passion, you know, really translates when you're talking to the people that you have to work with internally and externally. And I've been really pleased at some of the experience that I can bring about, even including students more in ApplyBoard conversations. And we just had a vision meeting this morning. That's why I'm dressed so fancily. And in our vision meeting, we always have a student who starts the meeting. One of the ApplyBoard students would tell about their story. And this was something that I brought to the table because I worked with students every day, and there's nothing that inspired me more than hearing, you know, it's really nice to hear about people's life plans and how excited they are about their future and how we've helped them. It just kind of like carries you through your whole day. So I think please do not think that a tech company, someone from the education sector doesn't belong. You absolutely do belong, because you know so many things that some more tech-minded people don't know and that they need to know. Yeah, you have hands-on experience guiding student success. You know, you're talking to a school. You want the school to do something to help you and to help your students. So being able to be in their shoes and if you've been in their shoes and you understand why they would want to say yes and why no, that's so valuable. And then listen, I've worked in schools, and I know how you guys work. I mean, people who work in schools work their tail off, right? And when you translate that to another environment, like, I do not underestimate the work ethic and the work experience that you bring to the table. Okay, next slide. And okay, so just advice. So just going back one, sorry about that. Yeah, so I think our talent team said, they really like detailed responsibilities, not only job titles on your LinkedIn profiles, because employers and talent teams really are looking at LinkedIn profiles. When you're reaching out on LinkedIn, it's always good to be intentional and specific, like who you are, what specific you'd like to talk about. Like any email, you can kind of tell when you've gotten a form email, and that's not what we all like to get. So really be as personal as possible. Again, we'll talk a lot about using your network and knowing people, but there's nothing unholy about loving and really liking the people that you work with and then sharing opportunities. Having interviewed a lot of people, I think it makes an enormous impression if you come really prepared, if you know the organization in and out, if you have some positive and even some constructive feedback on how the organization presents itself. If you start an interview and say, so what do you know about us? If they know very little, it's okay to get it a little bit wrong, but just show that you've made the effort to do the work. And again, some people say, this is what I want out of this job for me personally. That's important, but I really think it makes a very strong impression if you can demonstrate how you think you can help the organization. And I have this line, maybe it's not even true, but you can't fake authenticity. So I think trust yourself and who you really are, and I think people respond to people. And so I think really, please do feel comfortable representing yourself and who you are as an engaged professional. So some of the open positions, we have partner relations managers, they deal with schools. International recruitment officer deals with students and agents internationally. Student recruitment officers, there are people who are working in our office who help students. Customer experience, is all about processing applications. And yeah, so again, hundreds and hundreds of people that we've hired over the last year, and we have way more to go. The best place to look is the ApplyBoard website. They have a careers page, and I think it's listed on the page here. So lots of roles there, but we also use LinkedIn and Glassdoor. And if you're in the Toronto, Kitchener hub, some other people hiring there, D2L, Open Text, Economical, and then the schools that are in our immediate vicinity. So yeah, so that's my bit, and I'm right at 7 minutes, and so pleased to talk to you and happy to take questions after.
Thank you so much. Misty, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi. So Misty Wilson, I'm the ESL Program Development and Research Manager with IELTS USA. And just to give you some background on IELTS, in case you're unfamiliar with the organization, it's organized a little differently than other organizations. So IELTS test is managed by 3 different organizations: British Council, and IDP IELTS Australia, and Cambridge Assessment English. So British Council and IDP oversee the testing outside of the United States, and then Cambridge Assessment English is involved with the development of the test itself. IELTS USA is a nonprofit organization located in LA, and we're managed by the 3 partners, and we oversee the testing in the United States as well as stakeholder relationships. So if you are interested in working with any of the partners like British Council or IDP, if you simply Google careers British Council, there's a number of positions that are open. And if you're interested in working at an IELTS test center, then what you would need to do is just directly contact them, because they do hire their own examiners and markers and other people that are involved in the testing on that site. But I want to focus a little bit more just on my personal experience, and I might be the newest move out of higher ed from this group. But last year I transitioned to working with IELTS USA after 15 years in higher ed. 9 years I spent teaching English language learners, and then the last 6 of that I was directing a large ESL program. And I was motivated to move really just out of a desire to grow more professionally in a different way and have some new experiences. And so when I was looking, I did look at ed tech companies. Those were definitely the ones that I thought of first off. And I found a variety, kind of a spectrum of different kinds of positions, and depending on where you're at right now, there's companies like VIP Kids that come to mind, which is a Beijing-based company that hires US teachers to teach English to Chinese children online. And the curriculum is created, everything is done. You're really just the facilitator, and so it makes it a little bit easier to jump into something like that quicker. But then you have also companies like Teachable, where you can create your own courses and market your own courses if you're still wanting to stick within teaching. And then there's other companies like Examity, who are proctoring online tests, which we know is booming right now as so many courses are going online. So there's ed tech companies, and then I was also looking at companies that had an international presence, because I knew that I had that skill set, like Uri and Sarah have mentioned, of intercultural competence, of dealing with people from all over the world, and my students and faculty. And so I was looking for those companies that had some kind of work involved overseas and in the United States. And then when it came to positions, I was open. I was thinking of, thinking of not just my experience as an ESL instructor and an ESL administrator, but like Sarah and Uri were saying, these skills that we have that we've developed, conflict resolution, project management, all crisis management. We don't call it that all the time when we're in the classroom, right? But we've dealt with having to deal with students who don't want to work in a group together. Faculty, if you're an administrator, you've dealt with conflict among faculty. And of course, project management and creating programs, marketing programs, all of these skills. And sometimes when we're in academia, we don't call them those things. So when we search online, we're not looking for those things. So I was looking, from HR, training, anything that had to do with content creation, instructional design. And I used job boards. I looked first to the professional organizations that I'm involved with, so TESOL and NASA. And of course, then looked at Indeed.com, which can pull from a variety of different sites. And when I was applying, I think some advice that I'd like to share is to treat every application like a separate application. And what I mean by that is not to have just one blanket resume that you're sending out. You really have to be thoughtful and tailor and craft it. It does take it takes a lot of time to do your research about the company, to really understand the role, and then to be able to translate those experiences, because you don't want to assume that the employer has an understanding of all of these things that go into teaching, right? Because everyone thinks you can teach English. I mean, let's be honest, everyone who I've encountered thinks like anyone can be an English teacher if they speak English, and we know that's not true. So we do have to be able to, and the cover letter is a great place to do that, to give some specific examples of the work that you've done and how that can translate into a skill that employer needs. And then over apply. So apply for positions that you're not 100% qualified for. And I think Sarah mentioned this as well. And it's, there are software maybe that you don't know. There is something that you haven't managed, maybe even a budget, but still apply. Those things can be learned, but your personality, your work ethic, as Uri mentioned, those are things that you can't build in a new employee. So don't be afraid to apply for something that you're not completely qualified for. And I also felt I got better with every new application, every new interview. So sometimes it takes, like you have to work your way. I hadn't interviewed in, 6 years whenever I was on the job hunt. And then all of a sudden I'm having to talk to someone. So I felt my own self-improving with every resume and cover letter. So even applying to positions is good practice. And then I would definitely review your social media presence. Google yourself. Employers are checking LinkedIn, as Uri mentioned. This is where employers are living. And so I know a lot of my faculty friends don't have a huge presence on LinkedIn, but it's something to think about. And in addition to just creating a LinkedIn account, really be active, respond to people's articles, their comments, be positive, be encouraging. Did you see someone speak at a conference? Put a little line out there saying, great job, I really enjoyed it. This is what I took away from it. As you're encouraging others, you're also then able to build your network a little bit more, as I know we'll talk about later. And then connect directly with your with the hiring manager. And so some statistic that I found online in a study that was done in 2018 found that the majority of job applications were, 50% were done through job boards, 35% were done through the internal career site, but only 1% of those that used the job board or internal career sites to apply landed a position. And in fact, the best way is to connect directly with the hiring manager. So do that homework, whether it's even just you apply through the job board, but then you send that hiring manager a message saying, hey, I applied, looking forward to hearing from you. Let me know if you need anything else, those kind of things. But I'll go ahead and my time's up, so I'm going to pass it over to Jesse.
Great. Thanks, Misty. Thanks to Lead5050 as well for having me here today. I am Jess Atkins. I represent Guard.me International Insurance. I have been with Guard.me for almost 6 years. And prior to that, I worked for about 10 years in higher education and international education. So supporting recruitment, admissions, immigration advising, and student support for international students. And it was my choice. I made the move to work, as we call it in insurance, the dark side, working over in the insurance realm. I have zero experience in insurance. So I'd like to share with you a little bit today about how I landed the job. I am also taking a new position on just in the next few weeks with ApplyBoard as a partnership manager. So I'd like to also just share with you my own personal tips on how you can transfer skills as you look for new work. For those of you who may not know Guard.me, Guard.me is the leading insurer for international students in the industry, and we are partners of many institutions worldwide, and our job is to support international students in what I call their darkest moments, usually in critical cases, student emergencies, and also on the mental health front. So we do provide insurance legal policies, and we do a lot on the mental health coordinating cases and counseling students, but we do a lot more than that. And so I'm going to share a little bit with you about that today. We are hiring, although we're only hiring a few positions compared to most of my other colleagues on the panel today. We have about 100 staff worldwide, and the vast majority of our staff are actually based in Toronto, who are doing administration, claims management, marketing, and the overall vision and leadership of the company is all based in Toronto. However, on occasion, we do hire remotely, and these positions are for those who are representing a territory. So they're working with a group of partners in a territory, either managing and growing business or supporting and training partners ongoing so that they know how to use the Guard.me insurance. Just a few personal tips. Check out associations in the industry as well as subsectors. Many of you come from teaching backgrounds, I hear, and there's a lot of different subsectors within international education that could work really well for you, such as the K-12 sector. Maybe if you're coming from the language school industry, you could consider looking at higher education. There's the home state provider area of the industry as well. So there's a wide variety. They have a lot of global positions, and also look at different service providers like Guard.me, for example, and the companies they work with. I call them partners of the international education industry. They've kind of got one foot in and one foot out. I'll give you an example. Guard.me works with Maple. Maple is a mobile doctor service for international students. They are Canada-based, but they also hire. So there's a wide variety of partially applicable international education jobs. The jobs that we're currently hiring for is customer care specialist, which would be more working with our education partners and our students and supporting their day-to-day inquiries. Medical case coordinator, which definitely would require some insurance experience. And this is dealing with our critical cases with hospitals and health authorities. And then my position, account manager based in Western Canada. And I'll tell you a little bit about that position on the next slide. And just to demystify the world of insurance a little bit, we have different departments, just like any organization. We have our claims and student support customer care team. We have our account management and marketing team, as well as we do a lot of day-to-day administration of our policies and the financial accounting piece as well. And we have an amazing student ambassador program where we lead hundreds of international student volunteers across Canada to promote health and wellness on their campus. And we have our mental health support program, Keep Me Safe, which provides 24/7 mental health support services to international students. So we don't just do insurance, we do a lot of other things. And when we do post our positions, we do post them on our website and on LinkedIn. And next slide. Some tips on looking for your new job and landing your new job. My recommendation is to bookmark any career websites that are of interest to you and set a calendar reminder and check back once a week to see what new positions have been posted. Just like Misty said, make sure your applications are specific to that job. Do your homework on the organization, the hiring manager. If you know who the hiring manager, you can always title your application directly to them. Make it very specific. And I also think that it's important to keep your LinkedIn up to date. We've all discussed this. You'd be surprised how many times I've reviewed applications where the LinkedIn doesn't match the CV. So it's really important to just make sure everything's up to date and consistent, and make sure you reach out and network. Feel free to add me on LinkedIn, add all of us. And if you ever have questions, you can always set up a coffee date to just chat about what the organization may be like, what it's like to work there. We're, just as Misty said, we're all in this together, and I think a lot of us would be very supportive and encouraging of that. Very important to also highlight the very specific examples of experience that you have that relate to those skills that you're trying to transfer. And so if the job requires experience delivering presentations or training, provide the employer, the future employer, with concrete examples of how your skills transfer. So that was always my goal when looking for work, is just apply and transfer my skills for the employer, and to make sure everything is very specific to that employer so that they know that I've done all my homework. And practice makes perfect. It's okay to keep applying for jobs, and it will take a long time in some cases to get a call back, especially when you're switching to a whole different side of the industry. But stay positive and keep practicing, because you will get a call back at some point. And when you do get that call back, come prepared to that interview with some very thorough questions on what you need to get out of that interview as well, so that you walk away also feeling comfortable with the job that you've applied for. Because it's not just them interviewing you, it is also you having a chance to interview them. And then what I've done here is just listed my skills that I had when I applied for the account manager Western Canada position at guard.me. A lot of what I do is training my school partners day to day, attending orientations and training students on their insurance and how they can use it. I do business development and sales as well, which is a lot of utilizing effective communication skills, presentation skills, utilizing technology, and then, building relationships and having great customer service. So as Uri said as well, the teaching industry is quite busy. We are very busy. So if you can multitask, it's also a good thing, because you'll be doing a lot of that. And yeah, thanks so much for having me today.
Great, thank you so much, Jessie. This is so important and helpful. And so I think we're gonna go to a slide where we'd really love to have all of your contributions as well in the chat box, please. We know that we've talked about specifically a few organizations. We know that you all know more. Please put links in the chat box if you want to share other places that are hiring right now. And while you do that, I'd like to invite Emma Tudor, who is with EF, English First, and I'd love for Emma to kind of explain to us the complex structure of that organization, and outside of that classroom, what are opportunities at EF?
Sure, yeah, hi everyone, so I'm Emma. I've been at EF for about 15 years, where I started, like many of us, as a teacher, and now I work as an operations manager in California. So I've worked with EF in the UK, in China, and then several places over here in sunny California, which is where I am now. So yeah, EF is really big, and even today there's new things that I learn about the company that I didn't know before existed. It has about 26 subsidiary companies. The overarching company is EF Education First, and the subsidiaries can be anything from like travel and tours, an au pair category, the business school, and as most of us know, the language schools. It's probably the one that we're most familiar with. And then one thing you might not know about EF is that while we do offer, the language schools themselves and any role that, you might often see in a language school, we also do a lot of things outside of that in-house. So anything that might be associated with producing a product. So for example, finance and accounting, we have our own finance departments. We have our own in-house people operations. So roles within HR, staff recruitment, payroll, learning and development. We have our own publishing and academic materials team. We have a flights team, creative marketing, Google search, customer service, IT and tech, education, and kind of more engineer style roles, as well as sales. If you've been interested in those roles ever, we have sales all around the world, and also insurance. So pretty much anything related to producing a language school. EF also has the other service department roles in-house as well. So if you've thought about EF and maybe applying for roles there, but maybe the schools right now are not hiring as much, you can also look at doing a lateral move to some of those different types of roles, but within the same sector that we all love. That's what I enjoy about EF. You can have a multifaceted career within the same industry with the same people. And then the English schools, most of them are back up and running now. The US is hit a little bit harder, as I think you know. But we have, schools all over the UK and Ireland, USA, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. The biggest schools are London, San Diego, and New York. And then in the summer, we also have pop-up junior programs in similar locations. The south of is a really big destination for summer programs, as well as Florida, California, and Australia. And some of those summer camps are producing now. I believe there's some positions still open. I think they are hiring for some activity leaders still, especially in the south of the UK. And all the positions should be on ef.careers. Go ahead and check out any open positions there. And then the big roles, maybe some of those like roles that we're less familiar with, they're usually based in the headquarters. So the main headquarters are in Switzerland, Hong Kong, London, Boston, and Denver. So they're the big hubs. And then we have that's just the language schools and the service departments for those. Then go ahead and check out some of the other subsidiaries. Like I said, there are 26 of them. The one that you might have heard of is EF English First, which is actually a subsidiary of EF Education First. And those are the franchise schools, which are based in China. I think I don't even know the number, plus schools, throughout China and Indonesia. And they're often hiring, so if you are flexible to go and work in those countries, there's probably always teaching jobs or director of studies jobs open there, academic regional manager roles. We also have a huge online presence, so EF English Live is online teaching to adults. It's huge, and most of our teachers are based in the UK and the US. And then we have the business school based in San Francisco, London, New York, Cambridge, Shanghai, and Dubai. So any roles similar to the language schools, but that are at the business school, they might be hiring too. Some really interesting random kind of positions and teams that you might not know about. We do have a cycling team, which creates lots of interesting opportunities. We also work closely with the Olympics, so we have an Olympics committee, and there's a diversity team and other kind of corporate responsibility positions. I did check the website recently. There are some roles there still open, whether it's a part-time business English teacher in Milan, head of admissions, manager of corporate relations, academic operations manager, kids and teens assessment writer, enrollment coordinator, technical support coordinator. Those are just some I pulled from the website recently. I'd just like to say, you know, I've enjoyed my career there, and there are open positions if you are looking now as well as in the future. And I just think this is a great time that if you are out of work, or, you know, I think we're all feeling a little bit nervous about where things might be, but I think this is a great opportunity to really think about where we are and using this as an opportunity to propel us all forward.
Thank you so much. So we're going to jump into, and feel free again, everyone, to, if you've got a few links, Jesse put a link for employment specific in British Columbia. If you do know of any local good websites to go look for jobs related to our industry that we love so much, please put those to share with the other participants. There are, you can see here also, there's just a few job boards. The pie jobs you're probably already familiar with. That is the one that's got the pie shape with the green, so the green pie piece. So that is called the pie jobs. NAFSA and TESOL are particularly huge in the USA, but a lot of the jobs posted there also are offered outside of the US. So please, if you know of the specific similar types of resources in Canada, in Ireland, in the UK, we'd really appreciate it if you could put those in the chat box while we're going through this last slide. And I'd like to invite Joy, who is with National Geographic Learning, also an expat from the ESL school world, to share with us a few tips about sort of how to job-proof yourself, whether it's now or in 5 years from now. How do you start sort of building some resilience in this area?
Yeah, thanks, Nadine. Thank you to Nadine and Emma for having me here with the Lead 5050 team today. I can relate to pretty much everything that everyone on this panel said. We all have the same kind of background. I've definitely been the in-classroom teacher, the director of studies, the center director, and same kind of situation, transitioned to the other side of kind of what Jesse was talking about there are all these provider companies that deal with all these different subsets of the market. And so how does that happen? How does that happen to you? How do we all get on these paths? And I think everyone kind of touched on all these points, but my advice would be the following: get involved, whether that be locally on a regional, you know, special interest group with IETFL, with TESOL, with NAFSA in your region. Maybe it's even in your town, maybe just in your city or your town. Maybe it's just at your company. Maybe there's, you know, you could have a committee there on something, but get involved, be a member of different organizations. All of the ones listed here are amazing, and many of them have changed my life. I know that's true of a lot of you. Volunteer, submit proposals to present at conferences, submit to, for example, English USA has a journal and they're looking for submissions right now. You know, anything that you can put yourself out there, give yourself a little bit of visibility. And, you know, I know Sarah touched on this, but I know this is true for everyone. That imposter syndrome where you're thinking, I don't know, this might be a little bit beyond me, or maybe I'm not ready for that yet. Say yes to everything, even if it, and especially if it scares you, say yes. If someone asks you to be on a panel, on a board, and you're like, I mean, me? Say yes. Say yes always. And if you don't see what you need, if you don't see that group that you want, but that you're passionate about, create it. Create it. Get other people out there that you know to join you. Maybe you don't know them very well, but you will. But if you see a need in the market, go help, go create something. Create a conference, create a committee, create a special interest group. It can be on your own, or it could be for one of these organizations. And connect with people in meaningful ways. I don't mean click on LinkedIn. I mean, write them a follow-up email when you met them. Include something personal. Do you remember we talked about that? Whatever. If you see an article that reminds you of that person, send it to them. If you know that you're going to an event where they might be going, send them an email the week before. Tell them you're looking forward to seeing them, but connect with them and continue to connect with them. That way, when there is a job with them, it's not rude or kind of out of the blue when you contact them and say, hey, I need something from you, because you're a contact, you work together. And be a good citizen. You know, turn around and pass that baton back when you get to another point in your career. Always turn around and try to help someone else lift them up too. Because I think what's really always been true for me is that you may see competition, but the competition, whether it be a company, another school, a person, they're not your competition. You all have the same struggles. You all work on the same things. And if you can become allies, you can become a force that can change the industry. And I think a lot of us have worked together here. And I see one of my competitors saying absolutely right now in the chat, but that's not how we all see each other. We work together because we all have the same things. And the more that you can get out there and get to know people and form those relationships, the better the industry and all of these companies can be. Because look at what we just did in the United States, for example, a couple of weeks ago. Everyone lobbied together to make sure that international students were not kept out of the US. We're not perfect yet. We're not where we need to be, but we made it loud and they heard us. And that kind of all working together, that's what changes things. So those are my tips. And you have lots more things that you can be involved in and follow here on this slide. And all of these organizations, be part of them, be part of all of them. And that's my advice.
Thank you so much, Joy. And I think you've shown us, yeah, really sort of how you can create something local that is actually almost, you know, as important, as influential as a national organization. So congratulations also to you and what you've done in Massachusetts. I think that also, Joy just mentioned, you know, supporting one another and lifting each other up. I want to take this opportunity to plug the Lead5050 Women in International Education Awards. This is your opportunity to celebrate those amazing people in the field that you work with, that you know. Take 5 minutes. It does not take longer than 5 minutes to submit a nomination, and that will immediately raise the profile of that person. They will get some time on social media. In fact, on a number of occasions, we have heard from people who received promotions because their own boss didn't realize the value that that employee had until the entire industry was celebrating that very person within the company. So it creates visibility. So do it. If you're uncomfortable doing it for someone else, feel like you deserve something, self-nominate. Or strike a deal with a colleague. Nominate each other, but really use this platform of Lead5050, especially this year, where some of us have taken, you know, pay cuts or reduced hours. We will not get a bonus. This is a bonus, being nominated for this award and raising each other's profile. So please do that, and it really does help them to get hired when it is the time to get hired elsewhere. The last little tidbit, I'm going to skip the launching your own business, though I will say that please find me on LinkedIn, Nadine Baladi. I think there are no other Nadine Baladis in this world, so it's really easy to find me. I'm happy to talk with you if you're curious about launching your own business, about, you know, going into consulting. Absolutely happy to do that. But I do want to just end this with this absolutely incredible tool. I hope that you can see it. Let me know if you can see. Are you able to see what I clicked on? Great. So this is an incredible tool. If you feel like you just have heard about 5 or 6 different organizations on this call and like, oh my gosh, you didn't even know they existed. Guess what? There are probably 10,000 more than what we've just talked about. So if you're particularly interested in the international education sector, this is all education. Focuses a little bit specifically on ed tech. But if you're specifically interested in everything, you're open-minded and you want to know about the best, greatest, most kind of, you know, global companies in international education, look no further. Here they are. We've talked about EF already. It's on this list. ApplyBoard is also on here. VIP Kids was mentioned today. So do go to this tool, the list, so, you know, and they're all categorized. This first one is by language learning, second one, language testing, so IELTS is in here. You've got the discovery tools. So I think then just international schools. These are, a lot of them are academies and high schools. Anyways, the list goes on, but you know, then you can click on each of those. You can look for their career boards, their job boards. These are all related to your skills, and all the transferable skills that were mentioned so clearly by everyone on this panel, you have them. And intercultural communication is probably the most important these days, as our planet is getting smaller and smaller. And we need to understand how to communicate with different cultures. That is an invaluable skill that each and every one of you bring to the table, having worked on the language school side of things. So I am not seeing any questions pop up here, but you do have our LinkedIn profiles. Please feel free to contact any of us through LinkedIn. Start seeing about volunteering. Again, you know, if you are actually in the USA or in Canada, those are fields that I'm personally more familiar with. We have a lot of people, if you even want to write your name, if you're kind of proficient in a certain country. I'd be happy to tell you also about English USA and volunteering there, Languages Canada and volunteering there. Joy can talk to you about volunteering at TESOL, NAFSA, you know, any questions you have even about those networking opportunities and connecting through people through these associations, reach out to us. I think we'll end the presentation today here. But again, I want to thank all of you for attending. I want to especially thank our panelists today for taking the time to provide all of our participants with such useful information and really practical tips. So we hope that all of you are going to take a few nuggets from this, and we can't wait to get your nominations for Lead 5050 Awards. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a great day, a great weekend.